The Cardinals had a really good offseason, but good enough to land them in the top 25 next season? We'll break that down. You're Locked on Louisville.
You are Locked on Louisville, your daily podcast on the Louisville Cardinals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Card Nation, what's going on, everyone? Welcome in to this Wednesday edition of the Locked On Louisville podcast. I'm your host, Dalton Pence. This is my 6th year covering U of L, 4th year hosting this show. Thank you so much for making Locked On Louisville your first listen of the day. Thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network in the world. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel is officially in playoff mode. Every game day during the NFL playoffs, FanDuel is giving customers even more ways to get in on the action. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Today's show is going to be dominated by football portal talk. I think that this is the most talented team on paper that Jeff Brohm has had in his career as a head coach. We'll explain why throughout the show. But we're going to begin today's show by reacting to ESPN's way too early top 25 rankings for 2026. Now, they do these rankings every year, and Louisville has landed in this year's edition of these rankings. So that's kind of the takeaway of the show, is that on paper, this team is really dang good. This is the most talented team that Jeff Brohm has had, not only at Louisville, but in his career. I will say this, I'm recording this show in a hotel at a work conference, so if the visuals are bad, I know that the green screen is kind of acting up. If the audio sounds bad, my apologies. If you're watching this on YouTube, if you're listening to this and it sounds bad, just know that it's temporary. So my apologies. Just wanted to make sure that we get some episodes recorded even while I'm out of town. But without further ado, let's take a look at the article titled College Football Way Too Early Top 25 for 2026 Season. This is on ESPN.com. It's from Mark Schlabach, I think is how you pronounce his name, Schlabach. The Louisville Cardinals landed at number 14 in these rankings. Now, I think it's worth noting that this is just one person. But he's not the only one that's given the Cardinals some praise in the offseason. Like, Card Nation already feels really good about what's happened in January, but they aren't the only people that feel a certain way about the way that the Cardinals are building next year's roster. You have roster retention, key transfer portal additions, you name it. This is a really good team. And I keep mentioning on paper because it doesn't matter how talented you are on paper if you can't put that on grass. So that conversation will be had when August rolls around, but we're not there yet. We are just now into the offseason and kind of looking at the rankings. Indiana is at number 1, Texas number 2, Notre Dame is at number 3, Georgia and Oregon 4 and 5. ACC-wise, Miami is number 8. You, of course, have Louisville at number 14. SMU is at number 17. And I think there's one more team, right? Is there one more team? No, there's not one more team. I thought Clemson, for whatever reason, was on this list, and they're not. But still, I think Clemson's going to be a decent team in 2026. But the Cardinals getting some early offseason flowers. Now, this doesn't really mean anything, but it's always cool to see this. It's cool because it kind of gives you a sense of validating your thoughts. Like, okay, of course, a school's fan base is going to hype up their portal class and what they did in the offseason. But when you see neutral fans or national analysts / reporters also give you those flowers, it's awesome. So looking at the excerpt, there's an excerpt built in. It says Louisville's 2025 record, 9-4, 4-4 in the ACC. Key starters expected to leave: Miller Moss, Chris Bell, Colin Lacey, Nate Kariski, Jordan Gerard, Renee Congo, Wesley Bailey, TJ Quinn, and Jabari Mack. Key additions: Lincoln Kienholz, Tre Richardson, Loane McCoy, Brody Foley, Johnny Brown III, Kason Henry, Tyler Thompson, and Cohen Entringer. Now, here's the outlook. Schlaubbach says this: Jeff Brohm will be back for a fourth season at his alma mater after his name was linked to seemingly every big-time coaching search. Brohm's teams went 28-12 in the first 3 seasons, and it seems like the Cardinals are slowly building to make a big move in the ACC. Kienholz was the number 13 dual-threat quarterback in the class of 2023 and threw 36 passes in 2 seasons with the Buckeyes. Schlaubbach goes on to say the Cardinals lost their top 2 receivers in Bell and Lacey. Richardson was one of the fastest players in the SEC. And McCoy caught 27 passes for 396 yards at FSU. Getting tailback Isaac Brown back from the transfer portal was paramount. The Cardinals will have to rebuild their offensive line, and there are replacements coming for the defensive front as well. What I'm about to say isn't really going to shock you, but most of the hype that Louisville will get, whether it's January 21st or July 21st, is probably going to be centered around the offensive side of the football. And can you really blame those people? Because Louisville had a really good defense in 2025, but they lost their defensive coordinator. They lost some key players. You still don't know who the defensive coordinator is going to be. And we're recording this at 10:14 or 10:15 on Tuesday evening. So as of right now, we still don't know who Louisville's defensive coordinator is. But looking at how the Cardinals went 8-4 in the regular season, don't think it's far-fetched to suggest at all that if Louisville had better A, quarterback play, and B, offensive line play, they might win 3 of those 4 games. Clemson, Virginia, California, again, shoulda, coulda, woulda, but you had too many opportunities to take the lead in the fourth quarter of all 3 of those games. And quarterback play couldn't really rise to the occasion. Offensive line play as well. It's not just on those 2 positions, but I think most of the blame, if you're asking the Cardinals fan base, they're probably going to point to those 2 spots. So another thing that we're going to repeat not only today but in the future is that portal rankings don't matter. I mean, they're cool to kind of fuel a narrative, but the reality is that we've got a large enough sample size to point to so many different teams that have either had really good classes, but the rankings didn't suggest that in the offseason, or vice versa. LSU had the number 1 class in 2025. Didn't matter. Look at what LSU did. A lot of those transfers that they brought in didn't play all that well. Didn't play all that well at all. Defensively, yes. Mansour, Delane, AJ Halsey and company. But that's just an example. Portal rankings really don't matter to me. Now, you might sit here and say, well, okay, Dalton, that's because in certain rankings, Louisville's really ranked higher than, or they're not ranked as high as maybe you think they should be. It's not, it has nothing to do with where Louisville currently sits. I would tell you this, that they're in the top 10. Because I've seen time and time again, these rankings get political. And because of that, I just can't put much stock into it. Like, yeah, there's probably some truth involved in the equation. They're not just like baseless rankings. But when 2 similar players are put side by side resume-wise and production-wise, resume-wise, and one player has so much more production, but the other player is only ranked higher because he had a higher high school ranking. Like, what are we even doing here? These aren't high school rankings. We've seen multiple times how a player falls in the rankings significantly if he commits to a certain school, or vice versa. I want to bring up this one situation. You can say that I'm a conspiracy theorist. I don't care. Eric Darty, the offensive line transfer from Boston College, when he committed, the night before he committed to Louisville, I went to look at his portal ranking. He was a top 50 recruit and the number 2 ranked interior offensive lineman. An hour before his commitment, which at this point, the word was out. He was pretty much committing. It was just a matter of making it official. An hour before he committed, I went back to those rankings, and he fell 100 spots overall. He was like the number 5 interior offensive lineman at that point, but he fell 100 spots overall. You're telling me that 100 better players than Daugherty entered the portal in the span of, 12 hours? Not buying it. Not buying it at all. So miss me with the, Louisville's portal rankings aren't all that great. It doesn't matter. Look at what Indiana just did. Look at what Ole Miss did. The proof is right there. Yes, I mean, there's probably some truth to portal rankings, but I've just seen so much to the point to where it's like I'm not basing my thoughts on Louisville's portal class on where they are in the portal rankings. I'm just not doing that. Because truthfully, I think that this is the most talented team that Jeff Brohm has ever had, not only at Louisville, but in his coaching career. And it starts with the offense. The Cardinals are going to have one of the best offenses in the country entering the season. We'll break it down and explain. Don't go anywhere. You're tuned into Locked On Louisville, covering your team every day. Card Nation, the college football playoff just concluded. FanDuel gave all of their customers even more ways to get in on the action with each and every game day of the playoffs. Because right now, even with the college football playoffs in the rear view, they still give so many profit boosts. Whether it's the NFL playoffs, whether it's the NBA happy hour on Friday from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern time, you name it. Here's what I love about it. You get to use those profit boosts on a variety of different bets. Like some people like to go with money line bets. That's just not me. I'm more of a player props guy, especially with the NFL playoffs continuing. We're getting to the conference championship games this weekend. I'm monitoring Sam Darnold's health, but I'm going to go with the offenses for I think it's going to be an offensive game in the NFC Championship game. So I think I'm going to be taking a lot of overs in the player props. So join me on FanDuel, which is the best place to get in on all of the sports action. Visit FanDuel.com to get all of your profit boosts every day. Thank you so much for making Locked On Louisville your first listen of the day, and thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. If you haven't already, go check out our new Everydayer Club. I see what you all are saying. You're not a huge fan of the ads. Well, if you're listening to this, you can get access to an ad-free audio feed for Locked On Louisville, which is compatible with Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and every other major podcast app. You also get an invite into the members-only Locked On Everydayer Club Discord server, which includes a group chat just for listeners of the show. Go to LockedOnLouisville.supercast.com or tap the link in the show notes to learn more. You all know me. If you're an everydayer of the show, if you make Locked On Louisville part of your daily routine, first of all, glad that you're back. Super appreciative for you all that have continued to tag along for this wild journey that is Louisville Cardinals sports. If this is your first time tuning in, we're glad that you're here. Be sure to hit that subscribe button. Leave us a comment in the YouTube section below. Both are great ways to help the show continue to grow, but back to the point that I was making. If you are someone who is tuned into this show consistently, you understand that for better or for worse, I'm just not a huge hot take artist. Maybe I should be. Maybe that would drive up views more if I started saying some like outlandish stuff. But if I can't back it up with what I feel like is justification and facts, I just don't I don't have much peace of mind. I can't, if I don't believe it, I can't really sit here and just tell it to you all. But truthfully, I think this is the most talented team that Jeff Brohm has ever had. Not only just as the head coach of Louisville, but in his coaching career. That's really not saying much because he coached at Western Kentucky, and those teams weren't as talented as Louisville teams. And he coached at Purdue, and he had some really good teams at Purdue, but not even close to being as talented as the teams that he's had at Louisville. Well, what can you say overall is the most talented team that he's had here. I would say offensively and defensively, it's got to be 2024. That team underachieved a little bit. But the defensive talent they had, multiple draft picks, offensively, freshman year Isaac Brown, Tyler Shuck, Ja'Cory Brooks, you had a really, really good team. I think that this team is slightly more talented on paper. Again, heavy emphasis on that on paper part, because being the most talented team that Brohm has had on paper doesn't really mean much if you don't put that on the field. That's a conversation months down the road. Let's worry about that when the season rolls around. On the field, I think when you look at this top to bottom roster-wise, you look at the two deep, you look at the depth that they're bringing in, I think that this is the most talented team. We'll start with the offensive side of the ball in this segment. The quarterback spot, Jack Plummer, Lincoln Kienholz, Miller Moss, and Tyler Shuck, well, this is where you might be questioning that, because Tyler Shuck was the most talented quarterback that Jeff Brohm has probably ever had. Don't think that that's a debate, but I do think that Kienholz has as much talent and just as high of a ceiling as both Moss and Plummer. But the running backs room is the best it's ever been. You've got a junior year Isaac Brown, who is better than a freshman year Isaac Brown and a sophomore year Isaac Brown. I think that he's more talented than guys like Jawar Jordan and Isaac Garendo. You've got another season of Kewan Brown. So automatically, your running backs room with those two guys is probably the best that it's been under Jeff Brohm. And then you throw into the mix Marquise Davis, who had a really good freshman season at Missouri. Braxton Jennings, who had a really good end of the season last year, 100 yards against Kentucky. And then Lakai Tompkins, highly touted running back from IMG Academy. So running backs, check. Tight end, I think Brody Foley, look, I understand what Jamari Johnson did for Oregon this past year, but when he was at Louisville and you compare Brody Foley to Jamari Johnson on paper, I think that Brody Foley is the best tight end that Jeff Brohm will have had, it honestly, maybe in his career. Now, questions over how they're going to utilize the tight end, that's a conversation for a different day, but on paper, Brody Foley is the most talented tight end over Mark Redman, over, I think he coached Payne Durham at Purdue, over Jamari Johnson. So you got the best running backs room. You got the best starting tight end. Wide receiver. This is where it gets a little bit tricky. I think that it's better than his 2023 receiving core. 2024, you had Brooks, you had Bell, who, again, you also have to understand that Chris Bell hadn't become the star that he was in 2025. Colin Lacey was hurt, so you had Ja'Cory Brooks, you had Chris Bell in 2024 for him. I think that Tre Richardson and LaWayne McCoy might not have like the star power like Chris Bell or Ja'Cory Brooks or Jamari Thrash, at least not yet. But that's a very talented running backs room with a ton of juice. And then you've got some speed in the receiving room as well. Wide receiver room, I'm not sure that I would give this team the nod over the other teams. But offensive line, I think there's a good case to be made. The guys that you brought in the transfer portal, Eric Darty, Anwar O'Neal, Kason Henry, Johnny Brown III, you're returning Lance Robinson. You're bringing back some other guys like I think Cam Gorin is going to be in the mix at one of the tackle spots. Evan Wibberly from Kentucky. It's going to be a very good pass pro offensive line. How good are they going to do protecting the run? I'm not sure, but I think that this offensive line is going to be better than both 2024 and 2025. So it's really only competition is 2023. And on paper, going into 26, I felt I will feel more comfortable. Like, I don't know, hindsight is a thing, but I still feel better. Like, if you were asking me, compare how you were thinking in January 2023 compared to January 2026, I would tell you that this offensive line is better on paper. So offensively, As a whole, you look at the five different positions: quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, offensive line. I think two of those for certain are the best that they've been under Brohm: running back and tight end. Offensive line is debatable. Quarterback, no. Wide receiver, probably not, but still debatable. But when you combine it all together, it makes the best offense on paper that Jeff Brohm has probably ever had in his career from a talent perspective. There is a ton of talent on this offense for the Cardinals. Is that going to translate on the field? Hey, TBD. But what a job Jeff Brohm did, not only retaining his top guys, but bringing in difference makers as well. I think offense is kind of what seals the deal for me in this hypothetical, but the defense, I think it's going to rival that of 2024 from a talent perspective. We'll discuss when we come back. Don't go anywhere. You're tuned into Locked On Louisville, covering your team every day. Carnation, I'm kind of going back and forth on whether or not there's going to be a Thursday episode of the show. Things are kind of slow at the moment. We've had a couple of bonus episodes throughout the month, so there's a chance that we might just have a late Thursday, early Friday morning episode of the show, which will preview the men's basketball game against Virginia Tech. We'll take a look at some bracketology and stuff. But if something pops up, we will, of course, discuss. But if you all want to see a Thursday episode, leave us a comment in the YouTube section below with some mailbag questions that you all have, and I will potentially answer those on Thursday. But let's continue in this discussion. Most talented team that Brohm has had on paper. Offensively, I think it's pretty straightforward. Defensively, let's take a look at it. I would think that the most talented defense that he's had is 2024, where you had Ashton Gelati, Corey Thornton, Quincy Riley, Renee Conga, Jordan Gerard, TJ Quinn. The list goes on. MJ Griffin. That was such a good defense. My gosh. It just didn't live up to expectations. I think that this was like the pre-tweak before 2025, right? Like the defense got tweaked a little bit in terms of scheme and things changed. I think you played less mobile quarterbacks in 2025, but things just didn't work out from a scheme perspective. And hey, defense wasn't that good in 2024. They just couldn't get off the field. This defense, I think, is more talented than 2023, and I think it's more talented than 2025 on paper. It's just a matter of, is the production going to be there? And that is a huge question. That's why we keep coming back to this point that it's still on paper, right? I mean, we don't know who the defense coordinator is going to be. But again, Brohm and company did a really good job of keeping your top guys and bringing in some really good players too. Let's look at who they kept on the defense. You kept Clev Lubin, who top 5 in the conference in sacks. He's back for a second season in the ACC. Possible ACC Defensive Player of the Year candidate at the Leo spot. You have TJ Capers and Stanquan Clark back. Stanquan coming back from that injury that he sustained last year in the James Madison game. TJ Capers looking to rise up into that TJ Quinn role. You return Antonio Watts, who looks like a guy who's going to be playing a ton of snaps on Sunday. You bring back Tayon Holloway, your potential CB1 for next season. AJ Green, rotational edge rusher who could be backing up Clev Lubin at the Leo spot. Micah Carter at defensive end. So you've got guys that you brought back that serve as a really good nucleus for 2026. And that's where we start, is the guys that you return. Maybe you don't have the name recognition like you did with Gelati and Quincy Riley, but Clev Lubin, Tay Holloway, Antonio Watts, TJ Capers, Stanquan Clark, AJ Green, their best days of football collectively are ahead of them. Well, I guess you could say individually and collectively. This is a really solid group that you're bringing back. And then not to mention the newcomers. Tyler Thompson from North Carolina, top 10 in the ACC in sacks last year. You have two of the top 5 returning players from the ACC. Two of the top 5 players in terms of sacks recorded coming back that were in the ACC last year. So there's your edge rushing tandem. Well, actually, you got 3 of them. You've got Thompson, you've got Lubin, you've got AJ Green. That is such a potent pass rush. You brought in Cohen Entringer from Iowa, all Big Ten caliber safety, captain for the Hawkeyes defense this season, started 13 games at strong safety. That'll play, right? It's like hitting a 300-yard drive down the fairway on a par 5. That'll play. And then you also went with production and potential both. Like you mix things in together. Like you took players that were highly rated coming out of high school, but maybe the production's not there, but you believe in the potential. And then you took some players that you believe in the production that you saw. So you went out and you got Jared Smith II from Kentucky, really solid 3-tech on the interior of that defensive line. D'Amico Kennedy, you got from the portal as well. DJ Waller from Kentucky was a member of the 2023 national championship team at Michigan, rotational guy. If he hadn't dealt with injuries, he was a starter at Kentucky. Caleb Beasley, TJ Banks, 2 SEC safeties that I think with a change of scenery, more development, and more opportunities, those guys are going to play better. Ben Perry is back for his final season of eligibility. He's going to back up Antonio Watts. That's huge. And you brought back some other guys that could rise into some playing time. Also at cornerback, I want to mention Santana Wilson from Texas, Bryson Scott from Elon. Don't sleep on 4-star signee Jaden Broadnax. He's one of those true freshmen that I definitely could see playing early on, whether it's in a starting role, whether it's rotational role. He's going to see some snaps in the fall of this season, or in the fall of this year, in the 2026 season. So altogether, you look at the defense, maybe they aren't top to bottom as talented as the 2024 team was, but I would argue that the offense was just a tad bit more talented than that 2024 team, especially offensive line-wise. So the defense is more talented than 2023 and 2025. I think the offense is more talented than 23 and 25 as well. It's just a matter of the 2024 team. When you break it down position by position, I think ultimately you come to the conclusion, or at least I did, that on paper, this is the most talented team that Jeff Brohm has ever had. Now, with that comes higher expectations. Of course, Jeff Brohm has to do a better job of eliminating the trap game, which he's not been able to do in any of his 3 seasons leading the Cardinals from 2023 now to 2024 was 2025. It's 2026 now, but 23 to 25, he hasn't been able to eliminate the trap game. So let me know what you all think in the comments below. That's going to wrap up this Wednesday edition of the show. Everyone have a great day. We'll see you back here coming up soon. Go Cards.